What's going on, everyone? This is Brian from We Don't Know Yet, a podcast where we learn something new every single day. And today we have a super show for y'all. We have the marvelous, the magnificent Jacent with us today. And I think it's going to be an awesome conversation talking about not just the move towards financial independence, but then also thinking about how do we manifest the motivation. So I'm super excited to jump into it. So before any of that, Jacent, what's up? How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you? I say it all the time to all my clients, at this point, no aliens, sky hasn't fallen, one foot in front of the other. That's my standard answer to that question, probably for the next year.
So at least a year.
Yeah.
At least a year. It's like we're doing better than we deserve. We're in September. Like I remember when it was March and I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna get through this year. So super excited. And Seema, how you doing, man? We gotta get everybody around in this one.
I can't complain. I'm doing well.
Yeah.
So that's
all
it.
Right, there we go. Just saying, I don't want to assume nor shorten all of your different accomplishments and accolades. So for everybody who's listening right now, can you give them a brief or long overview of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so professionally, I went to school, got my bachelor's in psychology, and I double minored in marriage and family therapy and theater. And then I went back, got my master's in marriage and family therapy. So I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. So by profession, I have a private practice. I work predominantly with young women of color on anxiety, depression, trauma recovery, just life being hard. So there's that part. I also, with the mental health realm, have taught at UNLV for over 5 years in personal growth and development, couple and family issues, multicultural issues in families. And this is actually my first break from teaching there since 2015. So I'm itching to teach somebody something. But I also am the mental health professional at a local charter school. So I just kind of set up resources and meet with the kiddos now virtually when they're having trouble and different things like that. So aside from my professional career, I personally had my own financial journey that I happened to share, and people started to ask questions. People started to, incite change in their own lives because of it, which was cool. And I finished paying off over $90,000 in student loan and credit card debt in May before my 30th birthday. And then that kind of skyrocketed into other things. So on the social media end, I suppose I, teach motivated millennials how to get a hold of their finances and, grow in their personal growth and live their best lives.
Did y'all hear that? 90,000? I just sent like a shiver down my spine. 90,000
in 3 years.
Woo.
That's the thing.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that real quick, because that's kind of a big thing for a lot of individuals that are in our age group. Having student loan debt from 30,000 to 100,000 plus, it's overwhelming. Some people look at it and they just put the notes to the side and just let it accrue. And don't do anything about it. How did you approach that? Like, what was your game plan in terms of getting that done? And was your plan to get it done in just 3 years, or did you have a longer plan than that before?
So initially, I knew I never wanted to go into debt. It was never my desire. And then life kind of happened. I didn't have a set plan of how I was going to avoid that outcome. So it kind of was out of lacking clarity on what I was going to do with my finances that led me to getting into that much debt. And then when I kind of came out of the fog that was my grief and loss, having gotten divorced and losing my father within the same year, my cousin had gotten me a book by a Nigerian author called The Smart Money Woman. And it was really charismatic, and it was someone whose story was relatable to me. And so in reading that book, she has little action items at the end of every chapter. So at the end of one of the chapters is calculate your net worth. And so on a sticky note, because I love sticky note math, I put down my net worth on paper, and it was negative, $70,000. And I was like, ooh, so that was the first time, right? Like you said, people get the notes and then they toss them to the side. And a lot of people have accounts that are separate. So you don't even see what the accumulation of all of it is together. So for me to put the whole amount together and add it up and see that, I was like, okay, like I have an option. I can accept that this is, you know, my reality and do what society typically says, which is, you know, pay it off for the rest of your life or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Pay the
Or I
minimum
can
forever.
forever. It's like the Sandlot.
Mm-hmm.
um, but I have another opportunity. There's another option that, you know, it would be crazy if I paid it off. Like, how great would that be? Because it felt, the idea of it felt good. And so when I was like, okay, I think I want to pay this off, then I was like, how old am I about now? It's probably about 26 at the time, turning 27 in May of that year. And then I was like, it'd be cool if I paid my debt off by the time I'm 30. And it just came from pure desire of what the feeling attached to that outcome was, that I was like, like, what would that mean? How much would I have to pay off a month in order to make that happen? And so literally I just broke it down working backward, and I was like, well, let's see if we can do this. I mean, it was just out of just pure, out of pure desire. And I like to take on a challenge. So I think that's probably a personality trait. That I was like, let's see what happens. So I originally said 3 years. And then I actually was even crazier. I actually wanted to do it in 2 years because I was like, this is hard. Like, I want to, I want it to be over. So I was like, can I get it done in 2 years? And I was like, it's okay. I don't need to kill myself in order to accomplish it. And I was like, if I didn't get it done in 3 and got it done in 5, at least it was done, you know? So it wasn't that the deadline was hard, but thankfully I did hit it.
Okay. So it sounds like the why was around, or maybe the motivating factor for you was that relief, right? That take that weight off your shoulders. Once it's done, and I can kind of focus on other things. But I feel like we have to dive deeper into that, because I feel when people hear this, like 90,000 in 3 years, they think it just happens. They think it's just like, all right, I made that decision, 3 years, fast forward, here we are. But there's some grueling, like sacrificial things that had to happen for that to come to fruition. So like, what did you have to give up in order for that to happen? What did you have to give up in the short term for long-term success?
Yeah, specifically for that goal, because I've had other goals that I've set out for myself and achieved before I even embarked on this one. For this one, I had to reevaluate my mindset around money. You know, I always grew up saying, like, I'm not good at math or whatever the case may be, or I came up with excuses as to why I couldn't budget, like, oh, I'm not good at budgeting. And all that has to do with your mindset, you know, and what you believe you're capable of or learning. And so I had to confront my mindset, and then I had to practice discipline, essentially, you know, in the small things on a daily basis or on a regular basis. Consistency over time, that's the thing that I think people get tripped up on, because people want to experience instant gratification, or they want to see grand results in a short amount of time, and that's just not realistic, you know. So the consistency over time took discipline, because it was hard. My friends were hanging out, like, you know, I was in my 20s, I was in Las Vegas before the pandemic. Okay, we could go outside, we could go to the pool, we could, you know. And so I had to you know, say no a lot to myself, and swallow that pill and allow myself to see what came up when I said no to myself, and confront those things, you know? So that's just the mental portion of things. But like physically, like, I had to get rid of stuff. So I saved my first amount of money by starting to sell things around my apartment. And then I decided to stop living alone and moving in with my best friend. And so, you know, there were monetary and like physical things that I had to also sacrifice, time, not all the time sleep, but there were times where I would take OT and I would work 12 to 10, get off, sleep for a couple hours, and go back, let's say like 11 or 12 to the next morning for a night shift. So that wasn't too often, but I think the willingness and showing up for myself is what allowed me to see small results in the short term, right? A little hit of that instant gratification that went a long way.
Now, kind of getting into the more concrete things that you did, because obviously you made some sacrifices, you sold some things to make some money in the short term, but what, like, did you use any tools? Were there any apps that helped? I know a lot of people that use Mint, so all of their expenses and everything is congregated into one area. Did you get a notebook and did you write certain things down? What exactly were certain concrete things that you did that people can and should probably apply today to their finances, whether they're trying to get out of debt or whether they're just trying to build a better habit?
Mhm.
Yeah, so the concrete things were definitely like it must have started with writing down, right, what my net worth was at the time. That made it
Hmm.
very real for me. So I think writing is helpful, probably even more so than using electronics, because when you're physically writing, there's a connection, there's a mind-body connection to what you're writing down and
Hmm.
reading your own handwriting. So I would highly suggest that. I did use the Every Dollar app. So I had tried Mint, that didn't work. An ex of mine had tried to teach me how to create a budget like in Excel, and I was like, this is not working. So for me personally, the Every Dollar app worked. What I tell people to do, or what kind of plan is going to work for somebody, is the plan that specifically works for them. So, it's the same principle as far as, let's say somebody works out. Not everyone is built to be doing the same workouts. Not all the same workouts are going to work for everybody. So that's what worked for me. And that's what forces people to have to do that self-reflection. But to me, the Every Dollar app was quick and easy. I would create my budget in like 10 minutes or so before the month began. And while I'm checking out, I can add it to, like, I will stand there for 5 extra seconds, hold up the line and everything, and
Mhm.
add it into my budget right away
Mm.
so that it's down.
Mhm.
So there was that, having budget meetings with myself so that I can look at things and keep myself on track. Um,
When you
and
say
then,
budget meetings, like was this something you did? You checked in with how things were looking every week, every 2 weeks? How'd that look for you?
well, see, I'm a little crazy. I would
Oh,
check like probably daily, because if you're
oh,
spending money,
Cool.
you know what I
Okay.
mean? Like that's a part of your budget. Now, it
mhm.
doesn't mean like it was crazy extensive amount of time, but being able to either look at your bank account, or you'd look at your budget as you're spending money. And I would sometimes consult my budget. So if there was something that I wanted to grab, I'll just open the app real quick. We spend a whole bunch of time on our phones.
Mm.
Open the app, look at that budget line item to see if I could fit it in. If I couldn't, then I would have to rearrange some items, if that makes sense. I will have
Yeah.
to pull from the clothing budget to add to the makeup budget, or we'll say. So,
Mhm.
and that could take just a few minutes. Like, I don't think it takes a whole lot of time to experience a lot of change in your life, but it takes a commitment to consistency in order for you to have that
Mm.
experience, you know?
Yeah.
Just that drop in knowledge, because right now I'm sitting here like, dang, when is the last time I looked at my bank app? And it might be a week ago. Like, but you're saying daily, like a dynamic real-time assessment of what does my finances look like, because a lot of us, man, and Isima can speak to this, he probably will in a minute. I'm the most frugal guy you'll ever meet. I don't like to spend a dollar. Like, when I spend money, I physically get sick.
He'll most
Because
likely use other people's money.
or OPM, that's how I live my life. Other people's money, that's how I spend for things. Because
Disgusting.
when it leaves my account, that means I no longer have control of it. So, but having that like real time like assessment, I think is so key, because you're in real time. You're at, I don't know, Steak Shack, and you're like, can I buy this burger? It costs $7.29 with tax. Do I got it? No, I got to pull from that clothing. Maybe I'm spending $7.29 less, and you're able to make a dramatic shift forward in making sure you hit your long-term goals. I think a lot of us don't do that. We're just like, man, well, I'll just pull from next month's. Like, it's no big deal. And we always stay stuck or stagnant in our goals and in our goal chasing. But Seema, when's the last time that you checked your bank app? Do you do the daily thing as well?
I do it every few days.
Every few days?
Yeah.
And then how does that, just as I'm thinking about just the dynamic nature of how you're doing things, how does that appear to other people? Because in our 20s, it's not cool. It's not cool to be that frugal person. I get stole on all the time for being that guy. Oh, Brian, he doesn't want to come because he's broke or whatever, right? So how did you come off to others, and did you even care at that point when you're chasing that really like pie in the sky goal?
Listen, I'm laughing all the way to the bank. So
Yeah.
anything that anybody wants to say or think, please consult your bank account and then come back and tell me. So and everyone's goals are different. So, you know, it's not for me to compare my situation to anyone else's. I think that money is a really personal thing. When you start talking to people about money, like it's like you're talking about like their most private, intimate life. So I was hesitant to even share my journey, because when I would bring it up, people would think that I was judging them because they were in debt and they weren't doing anything about it. I'm like, I don't care what it's your life. Like, do whatever you want. But I just felt this is what I'm going to do for myself. So the funny thing, I was like cracking up as you were saying that, because I thankfully over time have become more and more shameless at this point. So then this process has forced me to do so and be so. So there was a time where I'm a counselor and I have some friends that are counselors. We created a networking event for mental health professionals. So it was late last year that we were hosting one of our events at a restaurant, and I showed up with my own food for my own event that I was hosting for other people.
I see you.
And my friend was looking at me like, and the servers were wherever they were at looking at me, and I was like, what you gonna do? Like, come over here and say something to me or what? So
wait, you got to paint this picture for me. You came with the box lunch. You sat in the corner, looked at people while you eating it. You got to show me, like, what does that look like?
I was not in the corner. I was in the middle. I was like, I wasn't hiding. I was like, I brought my, what if someone has food allergies? And then it opened up my mind to other things, because we can sit back and judge people for stuff and have no idea why that they appear that way to you. And so I think that process really forced me to confront a lot of things, you know, as far as like embarrassment or shame or pride or whatever. I told everybody beforehand, I said, this is what I'm doing. Okay, you can invite me out, but just know, like, I might say no, I might bring my own food, I might need to leave early for work or whatever, or I might show up late because of work. And so I was clear in communicating with, you know, the closest people to me, kind of what I was doing, so that they were prepared for the difference and then didn't take offense or like be like, well, why is she all of a sudden acting different or whatever. So, you know, that was the precaution that I took. But yes, I was out here looking like, and people were saying things, and I was like, and those same people, guess what they're saying now? Wow, that's amazing that you did.
Like, congrats. We're so proud of you.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. When people look at their debt, right? Let's say they're in a certain job, they look at how much they make, they look at their debt, and they're just like, this isn't working. Obviously, you need to change your lifestyle. You need to live below your means, maybe change where you're living, what you're doing. But you mentioned that you had one, I don't know, were you doing multiple jobs at the same time? Or did you just have one job where you're working overtime? Because I'm curious if you were doing side hustles or other things that would allow you to make more money as you were doing all of this. How did you figure that out?
So 2016, I think in that year, I had to go pull out my old IRS stuff. I probably made like $17,800. And that's when I was like, I'm legit broke. Like, and I have a master's degree and I'm broke. And that was a part of my, I guess, awakening or consciousness, you know, awareness, because the misconception is that in order to be successful, right, you need to have a stable career. In order to have a stable career, you need to go to college. In order to go to college, it's expensive. It's so expensive. So you're going to have to find a way to pay for it. But there's only one way to pay for it, and that's to get student loans. So just know that this is what you need to do in order to be successful. But there's a misconception that you're automatically going to have a job, or that it's going to be automatically a high paying job. And that's just not how it goes. Like, that's just not how it works. So I was working in private practice, kind of like building a business from the ground up, essentially. and I was teaching maybe one course a semester at the university. So I had those two jobs, but they were very part-time. They were very part-time jobs. So in January, when I decided of 2017, I made the decision, and then I did the calculation backward, right? I need to pay $2,000 a month in order to pay it off. I looked at my budget and cut down as much as I possibly could in my budget, because there's two issues in being able to, progress financially. The mindset is the framework, but then it's either your budget is the issue, like if you make enough money but you just are out here spending like crazy, then you need to rein it in, or you don't make enough and you need to find a way to increase your income. So for me, when I did that evaluation, I realized, okay, I don't make enough. I need to increase my income. And from January 2017 to September, it's almost 3 years to the day, I started a full-time job on top of the part-time jobs, if that makes sense. So I was working full-time at the county Thursday through Sunday. I taught and I saw clients in private practice Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I was working 7 days a week, essentially. And I guess I kind of had I had 3 different streams of income, but it was like 1 full-time and then 2 part-time-ish.
Wow. That's crazy. That's crazy. 7 days a week, because sometimes people like, man, it's Friday. Like, we got to pop out. We have to at least take Friday off, or we got to take at least Saturday off. You working Monday to Monday and just trying to grind it out. Tell us, because I have to get at the why, because it still is, at the surface for me. The why for you was the release. You wanted to get rid of this thing that was shouldering you, or that was weighing you down. But again, people have that same why and do nothing about it. The grind that has to be put in place to work 7 days a week, it has to be more than I just want to be out of debt. Otherwise, we'll all be out of debt, right? So there's something in your future that you were like, I can't bring my debt with me there. So what does that vision look like? What was that vision for you that, like, because of that, I can't bring the current me and my current baggage with me to that destination?
So I'm borderline bougie. There's that.
Tell us about the fancy things.
I'm borderline bougie. So in my wildest of dreams, in my wildest of lives, right, the place where my debt cannot reside, I'm able to spend on myself whatever I need to be well. So you were right. You hit the nail on the head that it's not just about the debt being gone. It was much deeper than that. So there are a few reasons. So it was between wanting to be able to spoil myself and do what I see other people doing, and realizing that there is no difference at the core between my ability to accomplish and someone else's that's in another place. And so, I grew up working out. I was an athlete and I was very active. And when I went to college, and it was grad school that got me. When I went to grad school, that's when it all went downhill. In grad school, I gained maybe like 30 pounds in grad school. And I'm a short human. I'm like 5'3", maybe. Okay. So 30 pounds on a 5'3" human, okay, is uncomfortable. It's not bad. I mean, unless it's muscle. But that process was like, like I need to be able to live a well life. And in America, I'm also not originally from here. In America, we don't live lives that are conducive to wellness. When I go to the village, and literally what someone does from sun up to sundown, okay, is activity, and they're out in the sun and they're able to, move their bodies around. That's the life that I want to live, whatever that looks like. When I get there, it's not even fully realized yet, but I want to be able to be moving about freely. Like, if I want to be able to be active on a daily basis for the majority of the day. Like, if I could be active like 5 hours a day at least, whether it's just walking, whether it's dancing, whether it's lifting, like whatever it is, this was what my body was meant to do. And I can see what detriment occurred to my body when I was living a life that was not conducive to that. So the debt was the barrier to me being able to have a schedule and a life that lets me travel. I'm much more active when I'm traveling, because when you're walking around international airports, okay, I was getting like 20, 30,000 steps a day when I went to Italy, okay? So I wanted to be able to have a life where I can focus all my resources on practicing wellness, that I can afford whatever quality of food from whatever place that I want to buy it from. That if I, like an athlete, right, NBA, NFL players, they're getting massages on a regular, listen, if I need to get a massage on a weekly basis, then I want to be able to provide that for myself. And as a woman specifically, I didn't want to have to wait to like find somebody that was going to be able to provide this lifestyle for me. I wanted to be able to do it for myself, so that what if that person don't come, or what, you know, I don't want that to be a part of the process of dating. Is now that I'm thinking like, well, how much do they make, so that I know that they can take care of me, or whatever that is. I was trying like, nah, I don't want none of that stuff in my way. Okay. So it was about the place that my debt doesn't live is, what if I get pregnant at some point when I'm married and I don't feel like working anymore, and I want to take off a year. I don't want to go back. You know, what if I want to leave the country? Because Lord, listen, mass exodus might be the only way.
Might be a thing.
I love to travel. You know, I grew up traveling, so I'm like, what if I just want to leave for a few years? My debt can't be in that place. And then also just being an immigrant, first generation, third culture kid, like as I got older and it continues to reveal itself to me, I more and more am learning about the story of my parents and everyone in my family that made decisions that have impacted me and made it so that I have this circumstance that I'm currently in. Not that any other circumstance would not be just as good. Like I say it, like if I was in the village, cool, like I'd be chilling, but that's not the way that my life has worked out to be. And so in order to honor my parents, who are both not on the planet anymore, and to leave a legacy for whoever, like if I have children, but I already have nieces and nephews, and there's already people in the planet that look like me that don't have representation of, you know, as many representations of success and the ability to overcome and accomplish that. Like essentially that's the thing that when I wake up and I'm trying to find my clarity and how I'm going to move through the day is what fuels me to go to a job. Because when I was working at the county, I don't really like it. Like I wanted to keep driving past my job is what I wanted to do. But when I gave myself that clarity in the morning before I went, and I would write before I would go to work and say, I'm excited to go to work, to use my skills to serve my community, which was the opposite of, I hate everybody. Everyone there.
Jacent, can you talk to us a little bit about some of those practices? Because a lot of people are in situations where they don't like their day-to-day. They don't like the job that they currently have. They're sitting in a cubicle, they're in a dark room for 8 hours. They come out, they don't really have sunlight. So they go home and they start doing things to take their mind off work, and they repeat the same thing the next day, and they hate their absolute circumstance. You were in a place where you hated your circumstance, but you were able to bring about different things like writing in the morning, different ways to motivate yourself and push yourself in this direction that you were trying to get. What else do you do, or what else did you develop to have the mindset that you have right now?
Yeah, in the process, I also was kind of on a journey of understanding minimalism to an extent, some level of minimalism. Okay. Now, everybody's minimalism might look different. So, you know, understanding the idea that one, like everything that we need, right, is typically few. Like we don't need a lot of things. We want a lot of things. So being able to understand the difference between those two things and create a space that is curated. That's what I could control at the time, was my space, even if it was just one room. For wellness, then that made it possible for me to be able to kind of do the practices. Now, building habits for some people is really difficult, but this, I didn't jump into getting out of debt without having years prior of learning how to build habits. I've been teaching personal growth for 5 years. So like I know the principles and like what to do. And so I just had to apply them to myself. And I personally already had, by the time I was trying to get out of debt, the practice and the past success of doing it in other areas of my life. So, and I have my natural hair journey where I was able to accomplish certain things there and understand certain things about myself there. I did it when I gained 30 pounds and then I lost the 30 pounds during grads or just after grad school. And having the practice of doing it in other places helped me to have the confidence to know that I could do it again in this area, because it's just the principles that you transfer to a different place. Like it's same thing with working out, same thing with your money, same thing with your relationships, same thing with school. Literally, it's very simple. You break it down to small daily tasks that you can turn into habits, and when you do that over time you see results. Like it's just very simple, but it's much easier said than done for some people because they've already adopted habits of like avoiding these other habits that maybe feel better to them. When I started getting out of debt, I realized I was an emotional eater. So when I would work with people all day and hear about their trauma and their pain or whatever, by the end of the day I'm like, I need a drink and I need to go through a drive-through. And I was like, what? Like I didn't realize that until I told myself I couldn't do it because I needed to eat at home. And so you have to slow down enough to practice self-observation and then reevaluate what you want to do and change the little things. I was listening to a video today and he said, stop doing things you know are wrong and not in your best interest. You don't have to change your whole life, but there are things that you're doing that work to your detriment. So if it's a small, tiny little thing, just change the small, tiny little thing over and over and over again and see what happens. And when you get the small win, it leads to confidence and motivation to keep doing the stuff. So people think motivation comes first. That's a lie. You have to decide first, and then you have to do, and doing makes you motivated.
Exactly. There's so many ways I want to take this, but let's take it this direction. Do your friends think the same way you do?
In some ways, yes. And in some ways, they are still on their own journeys. So, I have friends that I've had forever, since middle school. And while I'm telling them what I'm doing and whatnot, some of them are like, oh, that's cool. And they're like, that's cool for you. And they're doing their own thing, And so in some ways, yes, in some ways they're doing their own journey. And I also have friends that are specific to, different realms of my life, if that makes sense. So I do have friends that I was talking to a friend yesterday and we were on a call and I was like, oh, that's a nice headset or whatever. She's like, yeah, I used to stream on Twitch and I used to get paid. And I'm like, oh, you're fancy. Okay. And she's like, and I was like, so why did you stop? She's like, because I wanted to start a business. But she's been debt free for like 10 years. So she can up and do whatever she wants. She had a stream of income. It was fine. She enjoyed it. But because she's debt free, she just wanted to start a business. I'm like, what? So I have different pockets of friends. And, I've got my pocket of friends that are just as gung-ho about personal finance as I am and personal growth. And some friends that are just on their journey and some that are just struggling and some that are thriving. So it's kind of all over the place.
Yeah. The reason, and let me just cap this particular point, because the reason I bring that up is we all have, like you said, these different pockets of friends, these different spheres of influence. And we are firm believers. We talked on previous shows about the circle of friends you have around you, and that you're an amalgamation of those people.
Right.
So when we're talking about this personal finance journey, if you're with all these friends who are spenders, who do love not to miss out, and they love to do the travel thing without the budgeting thing, excuse me, you become a reflection of that. whether it's conscious or unconscious, because like you said, it's the lack of a plan. You just defer to what everyone else is doing. So I love that you said that you do have friends who think that way. You might have friends who are further than you in that journey. And you're like, wow, like that's something you're doing. You're exposed to their journey. You're exposed to their plight, and you're able to jump on that. And like you said, there's folks who also are still figuring it out, but you're kind of that intermediary to be like, this is what I'm doing. That doesn't exclude or put down what you're doing, but this is another path, and that I could also be of service to you. And Seema is one of the most disciplined people as it relates to fitness, as it relates to business. So I know that if I want something, I can get it from Seema. And Seema's going to keep me accountable just by doing his life. He's going to be doing his thing. I'll be like, dang, Seema's reading a book on a Tuesday. Let me go pick up a book. You know what I'm saying? But there'll also be times where I'm just like, well, I got to also figure out my, like, where do I fit? Like, where's my best fit? But
Yeah.
let's hear about this. Go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Wait, me or her? Well,
let's
okay.
go. Let's,
you know,
let's go, Sugar.
Along with what Brian was saying, I don't know if you were about to mention something, but I was curious because, yeah, you have these different groups of people that I guess you do different things with, but is there a level of closeness that you allow certain individuals to have in your life?
Yeah, it depends on whatever that place is, if that makes sense. Whatever that part of life I'm considering to allow them into. I do in some ways do my best to practice a lot of vulnerability, so that to model for other people that it's okay in some ways, but I don't practice vulnerability across the board. I will practice vulnerability in a specific place, if that makes sense. So on social media, there's however many people that are watching, you know, what I'm doing, and I will show people my bank statements. Some people will be like, what? Or I'll show people, you know, I'll show people numbers. Literally today, my partner was like, don't post about your, like, what amount of money, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, one, don't tell me what to do. Two, people need to see, right, like certain amounts of money in a Black person's bank account to believe it's possible. You know?
Wait. So you're telling me you're showing these strangers your bank savings, like your literal, like, I just got paid last week. This is what I make.
Yeah, I'll show, like, it'll have all my accounts, and I'll say, in this account there's this much, in this account there's this much, in this account there's this much, and I'm like, I'll block my little, like, details or whatever. Yeah. But I think that that's visualization. So I'll be like, I told my partner, let me see your check so I can visualize. My friend sent me a picture. She got a check for an accident she was in, and it was like $20,000. And for whatever reason, she sent me a picture of it. I was like, I've never seen a $20,000 check. I would like to see more of those, you know? So vulnerability in that area, for me, I am willing to share. But in other areas, especially with social media, there's some parts that I like to keep sacred or to myself, just because I get to decide that. So I don't necessarily show, you know, a lot about my relationship or anything like that, because that's one of the parts that I'm just like, for right now in this moment, ain't nobody need to be all up in that area. Now with my friend, same principle, depending on the friend group, kind of, sort of. But I'm kind of an open book, so I might just tell it all.
Okay, we have to harp on that, because I think that segues perfectly into our next point. And I'm gonna tell you right now, if I saw you or Nsima, send me a text and like, hey, I made $20,000 yesterday, the first thing in my mind isn't, oh, I wish I had that. It's like, oh, let's go. I need a rock. I need a grind, because we need to see more of those, like you said. And that encourages the motivation in me to chase, because I see friends thriving. That means that I'm now exposed that this is also attainable for me as well. So for you, because you said something on a previous show, or it might have been on your live, you talk about manifesting motivation. So, and I see parts of what that might look like, but could you give us a little more clarity on what does manifesting motivation mean?
Uh-oh.
first, and that's a lie. Like, that's just not how it goes. So you have to decide first. I kind of recently came up with this little method, right? People talk about making SMART goals, which is wonderful, fabulous. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. That's great. But we don't get what we're supposed to do with those goals. So I came up with something that I now kind of call like the DART method. So you decide, you act, you reevaluate, you transform. You create SMART goals and you apply the DART method to the SMART goals. So first you have to say, hey, it would be cool to do a pull-up. That's one thing that one day, God, one day I'm gonna do a pull-up. And so I've decided already I'm gonna do a pull-up, right? The action would be what? For me to just hang. I'm not even pulling myself up yet. I'm just gonna hang. And then in acting, right, it's going to force me to reevaluate what I believed about my capability, to reevaluate what I need to do next, if it worked or if it didn't work, right? Maybe I need to start with, I don't even know, push-ups. I don't know how to do a pull-up yet. That is still in a work in progress. Right. But then when I reevaluate, right, I allow myself to transform. So that process, sorry, that's me. People blowing me up. That's a process that can't go wrong. And I call it the motivation loop. And that's how you manifest motivation, because you create it essentially by these small acts that you do consistently over time. You decide, you act, you reevaluate, you transform. You apply that method to your SMART goals, whatever they may be, and you can't help but experience progress because it's a foolproof plan, you know? So that's what I talk about when I say that you can literally transform your entire life by doing this and manifest your own motivation by applying these principles, essentially, which is work. You got to work. You can't, it don't just come out the air.
Yo, real quick, I love that visualization of the dart, because when you're playing darts, you throw a dart, it hits one spot, you evaluate, you're like, okay, let's throw it again, and maybe you get closer to that bullseye. So that's brilliant. I gotta watch my language. I know Brian. Ooh, sorry, but that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
G-rated out here.
My bad.
But I do love that dart because, again, the inflection point is in the decision. Because the decision means that you've actually owned it and that you begin to act on it. And I love that. The reevaluate part is something that I think we all miss, because we'll act for a while. It's like, cool, I want to eat better. I'm meal prepping, but then I don't know. I reevaluate, or I fail to reevaluate, and I say, why did I start eating potato chips and brownies and milkshakes every day? It just happens. It's like, no, I should have been every Sunday when I'm meal prepping, like, all right, what's going on, and like, how am I doing, and where do I slip up, and where do I need a healthy substitute? So that reevaluation point is, I think, so critical for all of our progress. And like you said, to transform our lives from the former into what's next.
Yeah, cool.
Go ahead, Jacent. You got something on your mind. It looks like you want to say something. I paused because I was like, she's about to say something. So let me just stop.
Sometimes I stop myself because, you know, part of me wants to like be PC or not hurt people's feelings. But I think maybe our feelings need to be hurt sometimes.
Somebody got to get hurt. Somebody needs to hear it.
In order to grow, you know what I mean? It's called growing pains, not growing feels good. So recently what has come to mind for me is like elevating one's standards. Like, people need to elevate their standards. And I think Tony Robbins is who I heard talking about it, that people don't typically get just what they want. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I want a Maserati, like that would be cool. But if it's not the standard for me, then I'm not going to make it happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I feel like people are out here just settling, you know, like they're settling in their relationships, and they're settling in their work, and they're settling with themselves. And but you know what's crazy? When people go to Starbucks, let's say, people aren't settling at Starbucks. When someone goes to Starbucks, they're like, I want 2 pumps of gold flakes and Cyndi Lauper to hand me my drink. The specificity that people create around things that are, I don't want to say like mundane or like insignificant, is crazy compared to the level of how vague they are when it comes to things that affect their whole entire life. Their career, their relationships, their wellness, their mind, their body. And so that's why I'm like, people need to elevate their standards, because I mean, you could not. I don't want to like force it up. And so then I hold myself back, because like I'm like, am I imposing like my way of thinking on people? So when you're talking about friends, I have friends that are not where I'm at right now, and that's cool. And I have to like rein it in sometimes, because I also don't want to be like preachy or whatever. But at the same time, I'm like, people are out here dying every day. Like September is Suicide Awareness Month. And as a mental health professional, I have a very grim reality, okay, of hearing about pain and suffering and death a lot. And there are things that people can do and shifts that they can create for themselves to not struggle as much. And what I want is people to take ownership of what they can, the parts that, you know, it's possible to control, so that they can live better for however long that is, you know? So that's what was swimming in my brain. I'm like, do I want to hurt people's feelings today, or do I want to be nice?
Nah, you need to say it louder, because there's somebody right now who is falling asleep. They got to wake up. And I think that's beautiful, such a beautiful point. Take ownership of your current reality, because that Starbucks analogy was on point. Because when they miss that 1 pump, you only put 5 pumps in here. Nah, take that back, bro. Take that back, bro. I don't want that. It's like, what? But we don't have that same level of awareness for our own livelihood. So I think where we're sitting, and I think where we are in alignment, is making purpose cool. Like, it's cool to live a purposeful life. It's cool to be disciplined. It's cool to have vision and think about how or ways do I create that vision. You don't just have to swim in this murky water of uncertainty. And that's just what we do when we're 20s. And then in our 30s is when I figure it out. It's like, no, you can change, you can move, you can adapt. You don't have to stay in the same place. So I love that, because somebody today, some 20-year-old needs to hear that.
You know what? Let's go ahead and let's rein it in here. I want to ask you one last question. When did you, or have you figured out your purpose? What would it be, and how are you living it out?
You know, I think I figured out what I believe to be my purpose right now, and it continues to evolve over time. So for me right now, as I mentioned earlier, is that I believe my purpose is to live as authentically as I possibly can, which means to show up filled with the best parts of myself, if that makes sense. So Wayne Dyer talks about like what's inside of an orange juice. Like that's all that's in an orange juice. Same with an apple and a pineapple. And you're never going to squeeze a pineapple and get lime juice. But when we as people like fall away from our, I guess maybe it's spiritual like essence or our alignment with ourselves, then we get filled with anger, resentment, sadness, depression, guilt, shame, all that stuff. And then when we get pressed, when things happen in life, we snap back, or we pop off on someone, or we just don't show up as our most authentic true self. So I feel like my purpose is to show up as authentically as I possibly can, in the small things, when I'm at the grocery store, when I'm driving, when I'm with clients, when I'm talking to new friends, because the collection of all those things, I hope, will lead to me living a life that I can be proud of, that my parents can be proud of, and that has affected my family, my community, and the world. And so it's grown over time, but really I just think that most people feel very lonely, and the opposition of loneliness is connection. And so if I can connect with people and really help them to see the best versions of themselves, then I've done my work. Because people are like, oh my God, your story, da, da, da. And I'm like, all you see in my story is the parts of yourself that you recognize.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you that you're seeing through my story. We're all a reflection for each other. So if I can show up authentically, people can see the best versions of themselves through me and with me, and be able to then ripple that effect out and kind of pay it forward in some ways. So that means that that's why I don't have an opportunity to not to not focus on being disciplined and things like that, because then collectively, if I'm not where I'm supposed to be, staying on point as much as I can, let's have some grace now,
Yeah.
then I'm creating a holdup in collective progression. I'm African, okay? We come from a collectivistic way of being. We live in America, which is a rugged, individualistic way of being. So what I'm doing is just returning and staying within what is authentically already mine by birthright, who I am by birthright, and inspiring other people to do the same for themselves. So, that's where I feel like my sweet spot lies. I absolutely love talking. Okay. I love conversations. I love having the ability to connect with people and just understand like the diversity and perspectives and different ways of being. I think education is huge. So I'm always claiming to be a student, and I always love to share whatever lessons that I can with other people, because we rely on each other. And I call everyone on all my friends, I call them my tribe on social media, like my tribe. We are all in this together. And just last night I was doing a manifesting motivation live masterclass, and they were teaching me how to use Zoom. Even though I use it every day, I still don't. There's parts that I'm like, what? And so allowing my tribe to be able to teach me and show them that I'm fallible, because at the end I didn't know how to end the meeting, and I was just awkwardly like, whatever. But that's what helps. That's what they see of themselves in me, is that not anyone is perfect. They're looking at me like I'm on a pedestal. They might look at whoever like they're on a pedestal. Like, we're all on the same level. We're all trying to figure it out, which is the premise of your podcast, which I absolutely love. And if we can just show up as authentically as possible, I think we would be in a much better place in the world.
Love that. I love that. I think that's a beautiful place to close. Like, as a student, I can see the aspects of you, the professor shining through, because you taught us a lot of beautiful things today. So Jacent, thank you so much.
Yes.
Where can people find you, and where can people know more about you?
Well, thank you for, creating space for these conversations to occur and reside. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat. And I'm most accessible and active on Instagram at Jacent's Gems. That's JACENTSGEMS. And then all of my links to the podcast, the blog, all that stuff is on my Instagram page. And I'm working diligently on a launch coming up here soon for a community of motivated millennials to be able to connect and support each other. So that will be very exciting if anyone wants to know more about that.
Nice.
Awesome. I love it. And Seema, can you take us out?
All right. Jacent, once again, thank you. This was an amazing podcast. A lot of people are going to get benefit from this. And that is all, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Hit us up at Instagram at WDKYet. And this is We Don't Know Yet, the podcast where you learn something new every single day. We'll talk to you guys later.
Peace.